to another episode of Trap Talk. I have co-host Richard Marshall Jr. here with us, and we are honored to meet Dean Townsend on the show. Welcome to the show, Dean.
Thank you for having me. And I just want to compliment you guys on your time and effort. This is some real next level stuff. So I wish you good fortune and keeping it going. And it's very worthwhile. And I appreciate the effort. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ricky, would you do the honors of introducing Dean for the listeners that might not know?
Yep, absolutely. So we have Dean Townsend here. I've known Dean since I started shooting back in about 1988. Dean's been shooting since 1970. He's a 14-time All-American. Dean's been on the Central Handicap Committee since 93. Is that correct, Dean?
Correct, yes.
So Dean's been a part of shooting his whole life. He's got over 362,000 targets. And this 2023 Grand American will be Dean's 55th Grand American. So welcome to the show, Dean.
Thank you again. My pleasure.
Awesome. You know, that's 55 Grand Americas. I've only been to, I don't know, since 2005 was my first one. So I feel like I've been there a long time. I can't even imagine what 55 of them would be like.
Well, two of the Grand Americans, I went with my dad. I didn't actually shoot until 1970. But my journey through trap shooting is kind of backwards from the rest of you guys and most of the people in the sport. I got introduced to trap shooting because of the Grand American. Well, I grew up living about maybe 35, 40 minutes west of the Grand in a small little town called Eaton, Ohio. And so we went over to the Grand for a few years. My dad always liked good quality shotguns and shooting and hunting. And so he bought a gun in 1969 and tried to shoot it. And I was always dogging him like, hey, I want to shoot. Well, finally I got the best of him. So then my first Grand I competed in was 1970. We talk about goal setting. One of the goals that he set for me that year, and he was a high school basketball and baseball coach, and he knew how to coach kids. He didn't know a whole lot about shooting, but he knew how to coach young men, especially me. And one of the goals that we set was to break a 90 in the Grand American in 1970, which I was able to do. And that's where I first was introduced to nervous reactions. On the last 5 targets, I was kind of standing on March ice. So, waiting for the disaster to happen. But that was the first goal I really remember setting, and I was able to pull that off, and that was 1970.
I wasn't even born. I was born in 74, so...
Yeah. Well, I was born in 91, so you probably got triggers and guns older than me.
I probably do have. So I probably have ammo older than you.
So one thing I know a lot of people want to know from you, Dean, is tell us how trap has evolved and changed since you've started to now. If you wouldn't mind just walking us down memory lane, what have you experienced? What was good then? What's good now? And maybe what are some things that we could do in 2023 to bring the game back to its height?
I don't want to run over the whole program with the changes because they've been very, very numerous over the last 50 years. When I got involved in shooting, there were a lot of people who played option money. They were blue collar shooters. I think trap shooting over the years from the 30s and 40s into the 60s and 70s was a money game. People shot for money. It has evolved since then to shooting for something like points. And the money has kind of gone out of the game. In 2019, I went into the Ohio Hall of Fame, and I was looking through some of my old memorabilia, and I found a program from the 1972 Ohio State Shoot. And the cost to shoot 100 targets in 1972 at the Ohio State Shoot in Vandalia was $8. And the daily fees were, I think, $1.50 for ATA and Ohio fees. So you're talking $10 to shoot 100 targets, which back then that was a pretty good deal of money. And if you look on down the list on that program, the option monies weren't that much different than they are today. The Lewis class, I think, was $5. Purses were $10. So if you multiply in the factor of cost, and now it's basically what, $50 to shoot 100. Just to go down the road and shoot targets. So if you multiply those option numbers by 5, you're looking at a $25 minimum Lewis class. and you're looking at probably a $75 minimum purse. And nobody plays that kind of money anymore. They don't, if you see a Lewis class that's over $20, people are like, I'm not playing that. And, purse money, you don't have $100 purses, which if you want to get the money back to where it was, that's what you need. The flip side of that coin, if you do that, then people won't play the option money. And that's why I think it's important to kind of mention at this point the effect that Bill Martin has had on donating that pot money to the Lewis classes. He has, on his own, brought the Lewis class money back to where it was in the 70s and early 80s, because now there's extra money in there that people can shoot for. I generally don't play options. I always tell people, if I have to police it, I don't play it, which is kind of the way I've always been. But if I'm shooting bad, I'll play a Lewis class, because I figure I like to get paid for shooting bad. But I almost always try to play that Martin Lewis because you're just crazy not to, with Bill throwing in that extra money and doing that for the sport. It's just a unique way that he's paid forward to ensure that shooting for money is still there. It's fun again. And it's kind of a throwback to that. So, hats off to Bill for his investment in the sport and all the many things he's done with, contributing to the Hall of Fame. And it's just innumerable. We could spend 40 minutes talking about his contributions. And Ricky, I know you know that. So, been fantastic.
Yeah,
but,
absolutely.
So we've kind of bred the playing options out of shooters. I think some of this has to do with the handicap committee. When I went on the handicap committee in '93, basically I was asked to serve on the committee by Joe Loving, who was going to go on the executive committee in the target year '94, September of '93. And I told Joe, I said, well, let me think about it because I'm not sure exactly what that all means. And I told him at the Grand, I'd love to do it with one proviso. And that was, I wasn't intending to ever run for the executive committee. Because back in the late 80s and early 90s, that was sort of the minor leagues. I mean, you went on the Central Handicap Committee and got your feet wet, and then you went on to the executive committee. And I didn't really want to do that. And so when I went on the committee, Joe said, well, he goes, I'll give you my one proviso. He says, I want you to go to Missouri and I want you to straighten that out because we got a mess out there and I want you to straighten it out. And when I went to Missouri, I got a real education in terms of what was going on. I mean, at that point in time, there was a lot of money in the sport, but it basically was the All-Americans, and there were a handful, maybe 24 people that were playing by the rules, shooting well and winning money. And then there was another 2 or 3 dozen shooters who weren't playing by the rules, who were managing their scores, just down outright cheating, which is how I got into the sport. And I called Joe immediately after Missouri, and I said, Joe, I'm going into this thing, ass deep. I said, I'm going to pass out more yards than a rifle range here. I'm going to, he said, don't worry about it. He goes, I got your back. And I made a few people mad. I stepped on a few toes, but we went in there and we took care of some of those folks that were it was just cheating. I mean, there's no other way to describe it. I mean, I had shooters that would go to Missouri and basically pay for a vacation for themselves and their family. And at that time, the Southern Grand was at the Silver Dollar in January. And most of those people had the yardage they'd won in Missouri off by the middle of January. And a lot of the scores that they were turning in were shot with a pencil. They weren't shot with a shotgun. And some of the clubs, they had a good deal going. I mean, the shooters would just give them money. They'd registered the scores, and everybody won. The ATA got their money. The shooters got their scores that could be used for reduction. The club made money because they weren't throwing targets. And then I came on the scene, and I became sort of like Satan incarnate there for a while in Ohio. So I the hit list on you. Yeah, I had a hit list, but some of those clubs now are thankfully no longer in business. They got run out of business, and I knew enough about working with kids. I just thought these shooters were sort of like kids, and I just treated them like that. And I would select on just a few shooters in that one pile of evilness, and pretty soon they'd all turn on each other, and my phone would ring off the wall, people ratting everybody out, and it was just. But But that, you know, the bad thing about all of that was, I mean, and it's funny now when you look back at it, but that was a very subjective ruling on somebody like me. I mean, we all had a lot of power back then. And just because we had the power to do things doesn't mean you necessarily wanted to do it or had to do it. And some people don't understand that, especially when they go on to EC. But just because you have the baseball bat doesn't mean you want to be swinging it, you know, when you walk into a crowded room. So, you know, we developed things over time on the handicap committee, like the win codes, the H codes, and things like that, that, you know, arbitrarily, we took that subjectiveness out of it. And people came to know that when you won, you were going to spend some time on that new yardage, regardless of how many thousands of targets you bought, paid for, and shot, or whatever. You were there for a while. And that kind of cleaned the game up when computer technology came into it and we got data collected and could look at things objectively. That really did take a lot of that part of the equation of the money game out of it, the people that were cheating and sandbagging, which probably was detrimental to the sport. I mean, because you had Missouri where you had these guys like Dan Benias and you know, breaking these fantastic scores, and guys that you never ever heard of from, you know, my area, Southern Ohio, Northern Kentucky, never heard of over 20 yards, you know, breaking the same score. And, you know, you look at their records, they never broke a score in their life, but you know what? They played all the money. And we still got a little bit of that going on, but we're quick to get on it now. And it doesn't nearly affect the game like it used to.
It's unfortunate. The thing that I never understood about this game, I mean, I've always known it as a gentleman's sport, as a game of pride and as a game of honor. And I could never really understand why people cheated, but I guess that's because I never seen the big amounts of money that they were seeing back then. I mean, I've heard it's big. And when I started, there was still a little bit of money in the early 2000s. I mean, some big Calcuttas that I see, but nothing comparatively. I mean,
right.
And the biggest Calcutta I ever seen was a couple 100,000 at Vernal. And that
I remember when Gary Sheridan came on the committee back in the late 80s, early 90s, you know, he was looking at some of the things that Steve Williams and I were dealing with. And he goes, oh, you all got a big problem here. He goes, we don't have that kind of stuff down in Texas. And he said, but, you know, we don't shoot non-registered targets. If everything we shoot is registered, there's no games being played. You know, that was the problem. And there's still today, there are some people that hold ATA cards and never shot a registered ATA target in their life. But they walk into some of these derby shoots, they use that ATA card to establish a yardage. And you know, I get people that call and complain at least once a year. And I say, hey, I don't police that. You know, that's up to your club. I mean, you know, if it's a problem, then you need to fix it. And and that's basically what they have to do. But there's money shoots out there. I mean, I know some people that shoot a lot of winter targets. That they're all derby shoots, 50 bird races, all done different kinds of ways. And some of them make pretty good money doing that. I know, Ricky, you lived there with Randy there for a while down in Batavia. So
that's what I was just going to say is when I back in 2000, the winter of 2000 till the winter of every winter from 2000 to like 2004 or 5, I lived in Batavia, Ohio, you know, off of Jackson Pike Road with Randy and Ernie Ross and his mom and dad's place, and cut timber with Ernie. And now we could shoot money shoots within 100 miles in a circle around there every night but Monday. And I think it was twice on Saturday and twice on Sunday, or once on whatever it was. But I know we went down one time to Tri-City, Kentucky.
Yeah. First time ever been down there. Grand American.
Yeah. And I went down and Randy's like, oh, there'll be about 50 people shooting, you know, okay. So I come in there and we're sitting there and nothing. No one's really signing up. And I'm like, and everybody's looking at me and I'm like, what the hell? And Randy, he had told them that I'd come in for the Central Handicap Committee.
Oh,
well, everybody's giving me the stink. Finally, he's like, guys, I'm just messing with y'all. And I'm like, what are you all talking about? So then a couple of the guys told me they were serious. And I said, no, I come down here to shoot. I said, I come down here to win y'all's money. Well, I bought myself, Randy and I bought me, and it was Keith Hilton, which you know Hilton.
Oh, yeah.
High tone, we call him. And us three split, and I broke 50 straight. Keith broke 49, and Randy broke like 45. Well, me and Hilton got money. I'm the only 50. They didn't pay me the jackbox. They said you had to shoot 3 times. Fine, whatever. But it was funny. 90% of those people, and Zach, you'll realize this. There was these guys, they had 20-yard cards. We started shooting from the porch, and they were smoking targets harder than I was.
Oh yeah. They those 20-yard cards are just, they never have ever shot a registered ATA target.
No,
ever.
but
and they won't.
You know what? And I actually talked to a couple of them, and a couple of them had said, well, my grandpa or my aunt, my uncle, my cousins, they used to go to the Grand in the Vandalia days, and, maybe shoot an event or two. Okay, well, that's fine. They were still, if they didn't have the targets, they were on the 25, of course. But,
Right.
A couple of them said, well, there was a few times they go up there and slip a 50 straight in, win some good money. But the funniest part is when I shot down, did you ever shoot Moorhead?
No,
Kentucky?
never been down there. No.
I shot down there and I won a ham shoot. It was about a 60-yard target, whatever. I broke it. Then I broke 3 of them that way. And then I broke one in the shoot off from 10 yards back, whatever, won this big cut ham and such. But there was a guy I was shooting against. He's standing back with me. And I said, you shoot ATA? He goes, no, I got a card, 19 and a half.
Yeah.
He's at 50 yards, just smoke balling targets.
I remember years ago when I was on the committee, Dick Mariskola, Zach, Dick.
Yeah.
And Dick was chairman of the committee back then. And we're at the Grand American. There were 2 guys that tied for the Grand with 99s, and the one guy won. And he was from one of the southern states. The other guy, I think, was from Nebraska. So the guy from Nebraska came in with his wife and kids, and he's walking, 3 feet off the ground. He's just tickled pink. And Dick punched his car. Says, oh, yeah, you're the guy that tied for the Grand American. Congratulations. And the guy's like, well, he goes, I didn't win the shoot off. And Dick's like, well, you got here, we're talking a little bit. And I don't know, maybe 20 minutes later, here comes this guy in from one of the southern states, and he's just shuffling along looking at his feet. And he walks up and he's got his bill of his hat down over his eyes, and he gives his card to Dick. And Dick's like, oh, well, congratulations, you won the Grand American. And the guy's like, yeah. So Dick punches his card, and he gives the card back to the guy, and the guy opens up his wallet, and there's 3 or 4 ATA cards in there. And Dick goes, what about those other cards? And the guy goes, oh, those are my Calcutta cards. You can't have those. So Dick looks at me and he goes, what's a Calcutta card? I said, Dick, I have no idea what a Calcutta card is, but I think the guy's probably cheating. So Dick's like, give me those cards. So Dick punched them all. He said a few adjectives in there too, as you would know Dick would say.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, that was the kind of game those guys would play. I mean, they just, it was just like just what they could do to get by with it. I mean, it was funny. And of course you've taken a lot of that out of the game now. So
yeah. Now, what have you done?
If they tried, they get busted.
Dean, what have you done is there any big changes in the handicap committee, or, you're the chairman. So, I mean, any new people coming on, or?
Well, not really. We have, the handicap committee is comprised of 5 individuals, 1 from each of the zones. And then we have 2 helpers at the Grand American. And those are appointed by the various executive committee members in that zone. My appointment as chairman comes from the whole EC. So, it requires an EC vote to put me in there every year. So my job's maybe a little less political, but my job is to kind of coordinate the Central Handicap Committee and make sure that we're all operating on the same level playing field. We're all doing the same kinds of things. So it's consistent. And then I report to the executive committee and make sure that we are all on the same page with what they want and what we want. And that's basically my function. Mainly the big differences in the executive or the Central Handicap Committee over the last, I'd say 20 years, is the fact that a lot of those records now are on computer, and we've taken a lot of the subjectivity out of it. Back in those days, I mean, there was a lot of subjectivity. I remember when I first came on the committee, people were complaining, well, you're doing this because we're getting into Townsend's money. Well, Townsend doesn't play any money. You're not getting into my money. So, and that's part of the reason why I don't really play it that much. I'll do it for fun, especially if Bill's throwing money in or something, I'll play it. But the main thing we've done over time is we've made it a lot more objective. And we track people a lot better now. So it's just harder to cheat. And when you do cheat, it's so obvious. It's like, wow, you really did that. So, but that's probably the biggest changes I've seen in the committee over time.
Tell me a little bit more about your shooting. I know we've heard a lot about the committee now and a lot about the history. Thank you for sharing that, Wes. But not only are you a committee member and a longtime AG shooter, but you're very accomplished and you've shot great scores all over the country. I've seen you win some satellite grands and shot some really big scores. And you are a Grand Slam recipient, correct? I mean, you've got that.
No, I've never broke 100 from the 27. I had a boatload of 99s. But I got all the way up to 95 one time, and I didn't think about it. I mean, I just missed the target. So, I mean, it's just not something I really worry about. I just haven't been able to accomplish it. But I started shooting in 1970, registered shooting. I actually made honorable mention to the sub junior team. I think it was the 72 target year, which would have been the 73 All-American team. And back in those days, you had to buy Betty and some flowers, and you had to send Jimmy Robinson a box of cigars. Otherwise, you didn't get on the team. Well, and that's how that all worked.
That's hard to do.
Oh yeah. So
Zach would have been captain of the freaking All-American team back then.
I was designed for that kind of team.
Zach, you do look a little Cuban to me now that I think about it. Kind of look at you a little bit. So.
Yeah, I got the cigar box behind me.
I see it back there. So anyway, I did make that, but then there was a long drought in there when I was finishing high school and college. And my real problem that I had back when I was younger is I didn't shoot doubles. My dad was a school teacher, and we didn't really have a lot of resources to jump into it whole hog. So I shot singles, I shot handicap, and I really didn't start shooting doubles until I got to college. That's one of the reasons why I never really made a lot of those early All-American teams. And, back in the late 70s, early 80s, it was hard to shoot doubles because it was kind of always the last event of the day. And a lot of clubs didn't throw doubles, and you really had to work at it to go around and shoot doubles. So I kind of trained myself. And unfortunately, there weren't anybody doing clinics back in those days, or I would have certainly taken one. And I would recommend any new shooter to take a clinic because it's a shortcut. If there's any shortcut in shooting, it's taking a clinic. It'll save you a lot of time. It's just a good investment, a good, solid investment. And if you go into it with the idea that you're not trying to mimic or copy somebody, but you're trying to pick up a few things that might change your approach to the game, then it's worth every penny that you spend to go do that. And that wasn't available to me when I was a youngster. And so from that 1973 all the way up till about 1996 or 7, maybe, was the next time I made the All-American team as an open member. And it took that long for me to get decent enough to shoot doubles, when you're doing it by yourself.
Yeah.
So trying to learn, but I watched people shoot and tried to incorporate some of what I observed them doing. And I read a lot of articles and people and how they shot, and tried to put all that into my bag of marbles to learn how to shoot doubles. And once I did that, then I started knocking off a few all arounds and a few high overalls here and there, and then things kind of took off. So
yeah, I remember last year at the Heartland Grand, did you win it or did you tie for high?
I beat somebody on a flip. Ricky, you don't remember who that was, do you? So
Dean and I both tied with 397s, and I had shot off, I think I shot like 13 rounds in the singles, and then a bunch of the handicap too. And I got up there, he's looking at me, and I'm looking at him. We're like, we don't want to shoot. And we're like, flip, sounds good.
Well, I saw Ricky stand there, and he's like, I broke the ejector on my gun. I'm like, he wore it out.
Ricky, you were in the single shoot off, and you were on my squad that week, or I was on your squad, however you want to put it. But I was out there smoking cigars, and you were with those kids, and they had that wobble trap going, and you were shooting singles, and it was like 275 straight wobble, and I'm like, holy crap, these guys aren't playing around. So,
well, when I was waiting for Ricky to get done wearing that other guy out, I was helping Carla do the trophies, and that was at the Heartland Grand Stockdale's place. And that year, for some reason, the guy that was helping Dale out, who helped Dale out for years and years and years, he just took off. Like before the handicap scores were even in, he just took off. So, Carla's there, and she's trying to figure all this out. So I just kind of walk over there, and I see this guy in there I'd never seen before, and he was he looked like a one-legged man in an ass kicking contest, pardon my French, but he was doing all kinds of things trying to get this up to speed. And I'd go back and there'd be a bunch of people sitting there under the pavilion. And I'd say, well, we're working on it. You just got to be patient. We're getting close. But we never did get close. It's like, but finally they were able to get that done. But no, kudos to Ricky, because he shot 2 more events that day, at least in shoot-offs.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And I appreciate you not coming for the whole overall that week, Ricky. It was good for me, not as good for others, but
well, I'll tell you, I like shooting at Dale's place. I don't, there's a lot of clubs I like to shoot at. There's some clubs I don't like to shoot at, but the one thing that all clubs have in common that I really like are the clubs that tend to treat shooters like customers. They make you feel welcome.
Yeah.
And they do things outside of just putting a target in the air.
100%.
Dale is just the king of that. I mean, he's got an event every day after the shoot's over. He's got food for everybody. He cooks out at night. And if there's anybody in this country that knows how to run a shoot, it's Dale Stockdale. If you've never been to the Heartland Grand, put that on your bucket list, because you won't be disappointed. Bring a rain suit and a good set of boots, but you won't be disappointed at the park.
I think if you're going to go to a satellite and you want to have the most fun you can, you got to put Heartland on there. I mean, I love going up there. It's a great time. And, there's not a lot of great food and cuisine to eat in Iowa, but other than that, I mean, it's pretty good place.
Well, there used to be until COVID hit, and then he's had to get food trucks. Like a lot of gun clubs, you can't really help.
Not at his place. I mean, just kind of locally being out there and active. There's
Zach, what's wrong with the bar we went to? What was that called? The Stinky Pinky.
That was good.
The Stinky Pinky, where your shirt buttons were going to bust off, or
that was a long time ago, Rick.
There's a place we went to, was over there. There's a dam or something on the river. And I don't know if you know what I'm talking about or not, but Louis got this, I forget what it was. He ordered something. They brought out, it looked like he had the food for 3 people. And I said, Louis, you're going to eat all that? And he goes, well, I'm going to try.
I know you said all of your time in between doubles and then starting again with everything and making the men's team in the 90s. For your specific style, I mean, are you like a lot of our other speakers where you're on the house and driving the target down, or are you a high hold? Do you have factor? What are you doing?
I'm pretty much on the roof of the house, which I have a bad habit. I tend to look at the roof of the house, which is a no. I mean, it makes you do a lot of weird things when you do that. But I've never been a real proponent of high gun, unless the target's like really monstrously high and has a lot of acceleration up. I may come an inch or 2 over the top of the trap, but I'm pretty much right on the trap. I remember years ago, another little story. I was over at the Grand in Vandalia shooting some doubles practice, and I go down there, and here, lo and behold, is Rudy Etchen sitting there waiting to shoot. So we went shot practice, and Rudy was hitting him pretty hard, and we got done, we walked back, and we're kind of sitting around back there. And some guy on the squad asked Rudy, he said, where do you hold on the first shot of doubles? Do you hold a high gun? And Rudy's like, yeah. He goes, I'm right at the roof of the house. So that's as high a gun as I ever hold. I said, well, I'm with you, brother. Maybe I'm not as weird as what other people thought, but a lot of people talk about points of impact on guns. And I've gone all down that road with shooting some of the Ludig prototypes early on. I still own one of the ARS first adjustable rib gun that Ludig ever built. That gun shoots 18 inches high, but it's a top single prototype, real light on the front end. My Blaser, which I've run in about 3 barrel weights in that, and it's not heavy on the front end. It just got a lot of weight in there. It shoots on paper about 4, maybe 5 inches high. And people are like, well, you're crazy. What are you doing? Well, the difference is the Ludig I shot didn't have that momentum. I needed something that would shoot higher because it pointed quick. It got there quick. And by the time I released the trigger, I needed a high shooting gun. With the Blaser, once I get that baby rolling, you can't stop it. And on paper, it looks like it's flat. But if you could actually see the target, making an actual shot, it's probably shooting much higher than that. And I don't worry about how high a gun shoots. I always pattern a gun to make sure it's shooting straight, not left, not right. And then I go to the trap and I just stand on post 3 and I'll shoot a box, maybe 2 boxes of shells. And then I'll make adjustments accordingly. And then once you make the adjustment, okay, learn to shoot it that way for at least 1,000 targets. Let your body have a chance to develop a little muscle memory, and don't keep changing things. I laugh at these guys. It's a little windy. They're over there taking the comb off and putting shims in it. I'm like, what are you doing? You're going to be like Hansel and Gretel. You're going to be lost in the woods here before long. But I've never been that kind of a person. But yeah, when I pattern, I do it. I pattern for height on the field, because I think height, there's a lot of factors that go into how high a gun shoots. And I think a lot of it is how the gun swings, trigger speed, just your reaction time, your vision. A lot of those things influence how high a gun shoots. I'm sure if I shot Ricky's gun, I couldn't shoot it. He probably couldn't shoot my gun. And that's just the way that is. Thank God today, guns are adjustable and you can make them fit you. When I first started shooting in the 70s, an adjustable comb was how much moleskin you could glue on top of the comb. I mean, and we've all seen and heard stories about guys putting Model 12s in the fork of a tree and giving it a good whomp. And matter of fact, we talk about Dale Stockdale. Dale gave me a little tour of his place last time we were out there, and he took me into his dad's shop. And he said, "You see those notches on the windowsill?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, that's how Dad adjusted the point of impact on his Model 12. He'd put it in there, give it a big kink. The second notch was another kink, and the third notch was the final kink. And every time he went to a shoot, that's what he did. Put that level of up in the gun." So, but now we have adjustable ribs, adjustable combs, and it just makes the whole game a lot more scientific and a lot more easy for new shooters to accomplish. I mean, it really is really good.
Oh, definitely. With the scores today compared to what they were in the 70s, 80s, the equipment from the 70s or the 80s till now, the machines, even the targets, the ammo, everything's evolved. But, we're talking about Stockdale's, and that is, I'll put another plug in for Dale. I've been going over to Dale's place since probably about 1989. We used to go over there on a weekend shoot. My coach and mentor, Frank Hoppy, who's, passed away now, God rest his soul, and my dad, we would go over there just on weekends and shoot. And he had shoots all the time. Dale, he is probably, it's a family-owned club. I know there's a lot of those around the country, but Dale's place, he'd give you the shirt off his back. He's torn corn out to put in camping spots. He'll do whatever it takes to keep the shooters there. And I hope that this year, the Satellite Grand, I hope it's a big shoot. He does a great job. Zach's just always trying to buy people out from not going. So,
well, I'll tell you a little story about the Heartland Grand. I looked at some of the numbers from last year's shooting, and I kind of keep track of what happens in the ATA with the number of targets put in the air and things like that. Yep. And there were some shoots that were up, and there were some shoots that were down. The Grand was down slightly, but single-digit percentages. Dale's Satellite Grand, after the Grand American, you figured, well, there's going to be a lot of air let out of that balloon, and it's going to be kind of a bust with not being able to buy ammo. Dale had a good shoot. It was about all he could handle with the new traps, and his attendance was like the Grand. It was like almost the same as it was the previous year, where there are some clubs that had 30% reduction in attendance. And I think a lot of that goes to customer service. Dale works hard to make sure you're having a good time. And you'll never see him shoot at the Heartland Grand, but you'll see him on a tractor, unloading a dumpster or unloading a pallet of ammo or something. He's a dynamo. I don't know how he does it, but another kudos to Dale. He is being inducted into the AT Hall of Fame this year. Yep. So congratulations.
100%.
Good friend of mine. Good.
The little things they do to run that. The one thing I love about it is when they finish the singles, they go right into the handicap. They don't even wait to do a call. It's just a rolling start. And if your field's open and your squad's there, you just go out and get it rolling. And that's how they can throw so many targets so efficiently. And I think that's just an innovation for trap shooting, because so many places are stopping the whole line and making a call, and he's just boom, 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 boom. It's very efficient. You got to check it out and get up there. But to go back a second, when you talked about your gun weights and point of impact, I know you said that Ludic was very light, and just for the listeners, light, you have that high point of impact because that light gun would stop on a dime, right? I mean, the lighter it is, the quicker it's going to stop, and therefore the more point of impact. And then the heavier guns have got more balance and follow through and more momentum. Is that correct?
Right. That's exactly right. That's exactly it. So, whenever you hear somebody talk about, oh, my gun shoots, 20 inches high, you almost have to put your tongue in your cheek and laugh a little bit, because it's like, well, there's no way I could shoot your gun. There's no way you could shoot mine. So God love you, but I don't know how you're doing it unless you're, shooting from the hip. But yeah, I think my personal experience, and when I first got the Blaser, of course, I did what any normal trap shooter would do. I set that gun up to be about 18 inches high. I couldn't hit anything. Yeah. I mean, I couldn't hit a freight train coming at me. I mean, there's no way. And finally, I got it down to where I was shooting it. And I went to the Autumn Grand, and we were down fooling around at the patterning board. And I made a typical trap shooter mistake. One of the guys I was shooting with, a Hall of Famer, he's looking at my pattern. He goes, man, that gun's just not shooting high enough. So, you know what I did? I made a mistake. I changed the impact. And then after I got done with a 13 out of 25 on the first trap, I knew I'd made a mistake.
So I got,
oh yeah, I got my tools out, put it back where it was. And I think I missed 3 out of the next 75, which is too late. I mean, I broke an 85 that day, and I was tickled. But, I thought about that all the way back from Tucson when I drove home. And I thought, it's not about how high the gun shoots. It's about how it's tuned to you.
If you have a 20-inch high gun and that's how you shoot it well, it's maybe you're running into the target and you're stopping when you pull the trigger completely, and you're having to make up for that. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why people might shoot one gun well with a higher point of impact and one gun not. But
well, and I think a lot of it has to do with starting points too. Guys that hold a level gun or a high gun, they need something that's got a little higher point of impact, because they're not charging into the target. They're kind of going east and west, and that target will get up on top of them. And I think a lot of the guys are holding high guns. I think that's a little bit of a throwback to the old days when we had people pulling things by hand, shooting off an old 1524 machine. If you didn't hold a low gun, if you held a high gun, bad pulls didn't affect you nearly as bad as if you were on the house, and all of a sudden the target wasn't there. You'd turn it down. And we had some good shooters back in those days that were probably holding lower guns that turned down a lot of targets, and people, would accuse them of all kinds of, well, you're trying to shoot straightaways. Yeah, no, it was just, they knew it was a bad target.
It wasn't there.
And it wasn't there. So yeah, that's just another change in the game, I think, over time. But my advice to people starting out with a new gun or having questions about the impact, don't shoot a gun on paper. I mean, to figure out how high it's going to shoot. I mean, think about it logically. You're shooting a gun from a standing, bench rest position. That's not how you shoot a clay target. You shoot a clay target coming up into it.
Moving into it with momentum.
That's right. So, the pattern board is going to tell you if you're straight, if you're square, but you got to go to the field and figure out where your impact is. And once you spend some time getting that impact, don't be changing it all the time, because you'll just confuse your body. Give your body a chance to develop some muscle memory. You just have to do it that way. And that takes a lot of discipline, and, it's not always fun to do things that you don't like to do, but you have to, grit your teeth and go through it. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's the thing, Dean, talking about the point impacts, and Zach was talking, the gun balance, all that. That's what people don't realize a lot is, I shoot a gun. Mine's 80-20, shooting the K80.
Let me ask you a question, Rick. Was your Kohler 80-20? Was it? It probably wasn't the same, was it?
It was when I shot the Kohler for 4 years, it was a little bit higher, but not a lot. But I learned to adapt. I don't worry about the weight so much. I just had to learn to kind of get out in front of a target a little more, because it was a lighter front end. But you got to remember, I also shot a Prozzy for 17 years too.
I was going to ask you that too. You probably don't remember back in those days.
Oh yeah. But the difference is it's like Krieghoff. They came out with a K20 2-barrel set, the 20 gauge and the 28. It was a prototype. I took it, brought it out to my gun club here in Lincoln, because we were a skeet club. And I said, I'll shoot skeet leagues with the boys tonight with this and see how I do. I went out, I broke 50 straight, the 20 gauge. Slapped the 28 gauge barrel on, went out and broke 50 straight. Now, a couple of the top skeet shooters at the club, friends of mine, one of the old timers, he threw the gun up. He's like, there's no bounce to this gun. And he goes out and he breaks like 2 out of 3 pairs. He goes, how are you? I go, well, there's the target. You just point at it and get in front of it and shoot. And he goes, I'm done with you. But that was a difference where I try to simplify everything. So whatever gun I'm shooting, I'm adapting to it. But the Krieghoff, just my opinion, 100%. Krieghoff's it's better balanced for me, you know, and exactly. That gun, it's 80-20, but I've tried setting up guns at the 110. You know, when I do these clinics all over, I'll get a guy's like, oh, my gun's shooting 130%. Why? Yeah. Well, because, and I'm like, okay, let's see how you shoot. Well, they're holding, you know, 4 foot over the house. The chart comes out, they're stabbing. Like, right. Let's drop your hold point down a little bit. And we drop it down. They see it. Oh, well, then we lower their POI down to maybe it's 100. And then they're centering the target. And I'm like, because I set everybody up like you're talking, Dean, set the trap on straightaway. And that's how we go. That's how we pattern a gun. I'm with you. I'm not into this putting it on paper because that's just, unless you're interested, it's really not going to tell you truly how that gun's shooting.
Right. Yeah. I had an interesting story years ago. I was fiddling around down out in Tucson, and I go down to that pattern board over there, like behind bank 8 or 9, and it shot to the south. So we shot, and I'm like, this thing is shooting to the left. It's never shot to the left. Yeah. So I get the bright idea. Well, I think the wind's blowing. So I go up to the other pattern board and shooting to the north. And now my gun's shooting to the right. I'm like, well, you know, you don't think the wind affects the way a gun shoots? So yes, in Tucson, it affects the way a gun shoots. So
that heavy desert air.
Yeah, that's what it is. So, yeah. But I didn't believe, you know, that was another learning experience. If somebody would have told me that, I just wouldn't have flat believed it.
I wouldn't have guessed that either. With your 50 years of shooting experience and obviously your accolades, it's got to be hard to keep saying, well, what am I going to shoot for this year? I know you talked a little bit earlier about goals, but how do you set goals being someone that's already won so much and had so much success in your career? Like, what do you focus on, and what do you recommend to our listeners that have been around for a while?
Well, my long-term goal is to make the All-American team. That's kind of every time I go out and I'm thinking, why am I sweating out here at 99 degrees and, you know, killing myself? Well, it's because you want to be an All-American. I mean, you got to shoot in all kinds of conditions to do that. That's the long-term goal. But the short-term goal, what I try to focus on, you know, day to day, is to just try to get better. Try to do something that makes it better, and do that by working within the fundamentals. You know, when I break a bad score, when I start out bad, I look at that as an opportunity to say, okay, I'm not going to win today. I already know that, but I got a 75 bird or a 50 bird practice coming. What can I do to make this situation better? How can I finish stronger? And that's what I always try to do. If you look at my high overall victories and even the all arounds, I usually shoot better on the weekends. And it kind of goes back to that, you know, what can you do day to day to just get better? And I think if you just focus on something like that, the two things that always stick in my mind, you know, you always try to just basically practice good fundamentals, and you try to like make sure that nobody outworks you at it. Because there's a lot of people out there, you two guys included, that just have a lot more God-given talent than I've got. So the only way I can measure up is to just try to outwork you, which I can't do. Although I did outwork Ricky on a flip one time.
You did.
But I'll never forget it. Hey, the most beautiful flip I ever seen.
You know, I let Louis flip that coin. You should have looked at that coin a little harder.
I know. I should have kept that dang thing.
You should have kept that coin. As far as goals go, that's basically what I try to make the All-American team. That's kind of the overall goal. But my day-to-day goals, week-to-week goals, is to just try to get better. Now, this year, in listening to your podcast, I have a couple of things I'm going to try to do differently. I'm going to try to work on my trigger control, which I don't have a lot of. I read an article one time from Britt Robinson and said, you know, a lot of the reason why people miss targets is they call for the target before they're actually ready to see it. Yep. And I worked very hard for a good number of years not to do that. I still do it, I still don't call at the right time. I get tangled up in the squad's rhythm and I shoot on their timing and not when I should be looking for the target. But that's something every year, every shoot, I'm trying to work on that, make that better. This year, I'm going to try to focus on that trigger control aspect, especially on the second shot of doubles. A lot of times I get over to the second shot of doubles, and sometimes I just let the trigger go and I just smoke the target. And I'm like, well, how about that? It was a magic shot. I'm tired of that. I'm not doing that anymore. I'm going to try to work on watching that target break off the end of my barrel and try to follow through for a few feet after the shot is made. Try to focus on that hard focus on that second shot. Yep. Those are my short-term goals for this summer. But the overall riding, engine of that whole thing is just to make sure I get better each and every week. That's what I'm trying to do. And, for those of you out there that you start out with a bad score, don't tell yourself, oh, I'm out of it, I'm going to give up. No, that's an opportunity. That's an opportunity to go back and, okay, what's the fundamentals? What am I doing wrong? What can I do right? What can I focus on? Pick one or two things, and you'll probably stumble across the one thing that you're doing wrong, whether it's not looking for the target like you're supposed to, calling too early, rifle shooting down the barrel. I mean, there's a lot of things that you'll become a better shooter for that.
And I've got to give a shout out to Joe Charnago on this, because he's a testament to not giving up. I shot the Grand with Joe this year, and he said something that I learned, and it just stuck with me. I still think about it. And we one of the handicaps, first handicap out, he broke a 22, and he'd been breaking 99s and 98s in every handicap, and broke a 22. And he just came off the line and he looked at me and he kind of shook his head a little, and he said, it's time to run the back 75. And I said, he means it. And he did. He ran the back 75. He broke 97. And I'm like, that guy, he just took that. He took that 22 and he said, I'm not going to let it bother me. I'm going to focus on the task at hand. And I know what I did wrong. Let's correct it and let's get back to winning. Right. So I think that's a powerful thing that a lot of shooters, they start shooting 22s and they're like, I'm going to be at a 92. Well, you can stop the bleeding at any time.
What's going to hit the Lewis class today?
Yeah.
That's Rick Kelso. That's Rick Kelso doing that.
You always get down to the last close. I'd say, what would Rick Kelso do? That's a funny story. I shot with him and B.E. Morrissey. We're over the Grand one time, and we get down to the last trap, and B.E. comes over to me and he goes, hey, you're shooting next to Kelso. If you look over there on the last post, you see him tapping his foot. He's counting. So I didn't think about it. I get over there and I turn around, look, and here's Rick. He's tapping that foot. I'm like, okay, but that was Rick. So
yeah.
But anyway, funny story. I got a good funny story about Rick Kelso. Last year I was teaching. We were cleaning out the library. They had this book in there on geography of the world geography. Thing looked like the Holy Bible. It probably weighed 50 pounds. It was about 4 inches thick. So they were throwing these things away. And I said, well, can I have that book? Yeah, you can have that book. So I took it home and she's like, what are you going to do with that? I said, well, I got a purpose for this. So I called Felber. I said, I need a picture of Rick Kelso kind of looking out across a trap field. What do you want that for? I said, just send me a picture. Well, he never did, because what I was going to do is have our print shop there at the high school make up a cover for this book that had Rick's picture on it. And it was going to be called Rick Kelso's Guide to Shooting Championship Lewis Class. And I was going to have it right there on the handicap committee desk at the Grand, and book signing dates and times all set up, and his picture right there. I never can make that. I still have that book.
You need to do that, Townsend. That'd be funny.
It's going to come. I just haven't got a print shop now that can do that, but it's coming. I still got the book.
Well, Dean, you're a wealth of knowledge. We appreciate you on the show today. Obviously could talk about the history of trap forever with you, because you know everybody and you know everything. Is there anybody that you'd like to thank today before we get out of here?
Yeah, I've got a few people I'd like to mention. Some folks that have helped me kind of out, along the way, and still do. Number one is Remington Ammunition and Mike Hampton, Senior. Last year at the Autumn Grand, Mike called me on the phone, and I just broken a whopping 89 in the handicap, and the phone's ringing, and I'm kind of down the dumps, and it's Mike, and he's texting me, would you consider shooting Remington Ammunition for next season, which was last summer? And I thought, Well, yeah, that's been like a goal of mine ever since I was a little kid. Because I grew up watching guys like Harry Kugler, Hiram Bradley, who just recently passed away, Jim Hunter, Ramo Luby, some of these guys that Joe Westhouse and shot for Ithaca. I mean, these guys were all, ammunition and gun guys. And to have that was always a dream of mine. So I'd like to thank Remington Ammunition for their support. They've been there for me, and my scores have come up by shooting that ammunition. And there's none finer, in my opinion. Ricky, I know you'll disagree with me, but Zach and I know the truth. So
I agree with you, Dean.
Yeah. And I'd like to thank Blaser USA. I've been with them since 2010, working as part of their customer service and kind of helping shooters get set up with guns. And I talked to Josh McBrayer day before yesterday, and it's a new day at Blaser. We have, I hate to admit it, but we've been absent from the trap scene over the last 5 or 10 years, focusing mainly on sporting clays. I don't know the exact schedule yet, but Josh assured me that Blaser is going to come out this year, swinging both fists at the U.S. trap market. They're going to be at the Grand for 2 weeks, not just the last 4 days. They're going to be at Ohio for the whole week. They're going to be at SCTP for the whole week. So mark that on your calendar. If you need gun service, they're bringing 2 gunsmiths to each of those shoots. I know for sure. Let's just talking about trap. It's a new day. I mean, we're going to be investing again in trap. I'd like to thank Dave Simmons at Extreme Shooting Products. Dave does my release trigger for the Blaser. And Joe talks about the speed of the Blaser trigger and the crispness of the Blaser trigger. Well, imagine a Blaser trigger that's a release that's been designed by this guy. It's got custom parts in the release hook. And some of that just makes for the finest release in the world. I mean, and Dave does a good job, and he's treated me well. And if you need a release for a Blaser, he's the man. He's the guy. It's called Extreme Shooting Products. He doesn't waste his time on all the other junk guns out there, but he will work on a Blaser. So, and then finally, I'd like to thank Shotgun Sports Magazine for giving me the opportunity to be a contributing writer over the last 5 years. That's been a joy because it's allowed me to express my views on things like shooting doubles for youngsters. A good number of years ago, it was SCTP, and I took a little break from the store there at Blaser, and I walked down the line watching these kids shoot doubles, and I was gut punched. I mean, they were all breaking in the 50s and 60s, and which prompted me to write kind of a primer for coaches. How can you train youngsters to shoot doubles, save some time, save some ammunition? And it's a 2-part series in Shotgun Sports. And there's some other things that they've allowed me to write about too, along with that too. So, and also I'm not really sponsored by them, but I'd like to give a shout out to ShootStation. It's a free app. It's written by Mike Herman. It's basically it puts the ATA card on your phone. And so when you go to a shoot, you don't have to depend on when the data was uploaded from whoever's doing the shoot cashiering and classification. You've got it right there on your phone. And if you go to the App Store, it's called ShootStation for Apple and Android, either one. Mike does a wonderful job, and it can complete your averages for the whole year, the last 500, the last 400. It's just a really good thing. And for kids, we don't hardly any of us carry our cards anymore, especially us three, because we shoot the maximum yardage, maximum class. But when you walk into a shoot and you don't have your card up to date, you're really taking a chance on shooting the wrong yardage. Yep. Whereas if you've got that ShootStation, at least you've got what the ATA's got on file. Yeah. And you're not dependent on somebody else's data, because if you classify and you're shooting the wrong yardage, that's on you. Even if the data is wrong, that's on you. ShootStation on the App Store is it's something you ought to invest in, because most kids don't have their card, but they all got their phones. Unless they go out to dinner with Ricky, where he collects all the phones before the dinner gets started.
Yeah, I've done that,
which I think is a good thing. Once again, that's next level stuff, Ricky. Congratulations. Yeah,
you know what? People don't know how to talk. I mean, they look at their phones. I'm like, converse. Right. Make friends.
Well, I laugh at some of these NBA games. These guys are sitting at mid-court and they're on their phone, and I'm like, what are you doing?
You're in a $20,000 seat and you're worried about
your phone. So Well, no, thank you guys. I appreciate the opportunity to come on here and blow off for a while, talk about the old days a little bit. And anytime, you know, you need somebody to, like Zach says, you need some filler. I'm available. So, love doing it. Like I said, I think it's next level stuff. I mean, you can read about stuff in a magazine, you could go on Facebook, but here, you know, it's one-on-one. It's somebody that's actually talking about their experiences. And I think it's just a great thing. I hope you keep up with it. I hope it works out for you and you keep on going down the train on that track. So
thanks so much. Thank you so much for giving us that vote of confidence.
Good. Before we get signed out here, good luck to both you guys in Dubai. Okay.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Is there any place we can go online to kind of follow your exploits on?
I don't know. We're going to try to post stuff daily. Zach and I are actually going to try to do a little, maybe a live type podcast from over there.
Okay.
Maybe got Wi-Fi. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, we're going to figure something out.
Well, I know Stormy Weatherford and Briley will put stuff on there once in a while. And Stormy's good about going to all those shoots. And I kind of follow what he puts on Facebook and things, but I just wondered if there was something like Shoot Scoreboard or something like that where you can kind of keep track of. You don't know.
I'll watch our Instagram page, and I'm going to do the best job I can of updating everything on the Trap Talk Instagram and the Facebook page. That being said, I do want to thank our sponsors. Obviously, Remington's our show sponsor, Mike Hampton, Wenig Stockworks, and we just had RM Shooting Clinics join as a sponsor, so that's an announcement for today. Thank you, Ricky, for that. We appreciate it. And anybody that's looking to learn more about the game of trap shooting, you'd be smart to give Ricky a call and do a clinic with him. I know I have, and it's definitely helped my scores and my game. Just a little sneak peek. We've got a new sponsor coming on, Shot Tracker. I've got one here. I just got it today. I'm really excited about it. And what we're looking to do is we're going to do a little review, probably me and Ricky. And then I think we're going to just give this away to a lucky listener. So we're trying to figure out how we're going to draw it. But this is about $1,000 thing. We just want to say thank you to Shot Tracker. And we're going to be giving it away in future episodes. So thank you all for listening. Thank you for making this podcast great. And we appreciate your time today, Dean.
Thank you very much, fellas. Good luck to you in Dubai. We'll see you.
Thanks, Dean. Appreciate it.